Hey y'all, welcome back. Just wanted to show y'all a few pictures of how I set up to paint. I usually print my photo out and then sometimes on my tablet I will edit it in a program that I use called Pixay Pro, and I use the posterize option on there. I separate it into about 7 or 8 layers and it just helps divide the values. So the reference photo I'm working from is actually a picture of my grandmother's blueberries before they ripened up. And I was drawn to the colors, so I decided to paint them. I'm using some cobalt green, cobalt blue, cobalt teal, quinacridone red, and nickel quinacridone gold. The entire first layer of this painting is painted wet into wet, so I began by wetting the whole page down, and then I waited a few seconds and I went over it again and made sure it was completely saturated with a brush. When I was a beginner, I used to have issues with my paper drying too fast or not being able to figure out why what I painted just didn't work like what I seen some of these other amazing YouTube artists paint, and my paper was just drying too fast and I couldn't get the fluid movement that they had. So when I switched to cotton paper and I began saturating my paper really well is when I noticed that that problem for me was resolved. In placing the colors onto the page, I pretty much just started with my cool tones and my warm tones in the greens. I'm mixing the quinacridone gold and the cobalt green and the cobalt blue to either lean my green to a warm yellowish green or to lean it to the cooler, darker bluish green in the shadow areas. So at this point, I've let the paper completely dry and I've come back to it, and now I'm just glazing in colors where I think they need to be. And there are so many colors in these blueberries. They were really fun to paint, although I wished I would have went just a little bit stronger in saturation in that first layer because I have to do a lot of glazing. And I think my end product would have been better had I been a little bit bolder in that first wash. So now I'm just glazing in some shadows, and typically what I will do to better help me judge my values in a painting is I will pick some of the darker shadows, and that lower left blueberry has some of the darkest shadows in the whole painting, and they're still not quite as dark as I painted them. I intentionally exaggerated them, but when I pick out some of my darkest shadows first, some that I know I will be safe if I get really dark, and I put those in, it helps me judge my midtones a lot better, and I can tell exactly how dark those midtones need to be when they're up against another darker shape. So here I'm starting to add some of those flower shapes at the tips of the berries using Quin Red, and when I get to the cooler, more shadowed tones, I will add some cobalt blue to that mix to cool it down, and when I get more over towards the sunlit side, I will add some Quin Gold to warm it up and make it a little bit more peachy. I'm using Quin Red as my base color, and I will lean it whichever way I feel like the picture needs. So if I want it to be more bright, if I want it to be more warm, I will lean it with the Quin Gold. And if I want it to be cooler and darker, I will lean it the opposite way on the color wheel with the cobalt blue. And all of this work right now is just glazing. It's me placing blobs of paint down on dry paper, and then I will take my clean brush. I usually have 2 brushes in my hand. One has paint on it and one has clear water. And I will take that clean brush and I will bleed out whatever areas I think need to be softened. In this particular case, it's the outside rim of the little flower shapes inside the berries, because the inside rims need to have that harder edge. Moving on to the leaves, I used the same greens and yellows that I used when painting the berries to start out with. But I am not in love with these leaves at this point. To me, they just look unfinished, but we will get farther along in the painting and I will correct it, and I believe I came away with something that I was fairly happy with. My inspiration to pull this whole painting together actually came from that one swipe of cobalt teal that I just covered up on that bottom leaf right there. And because these berries were so bright, I just went ahead and decided to bleed some more of the color out from the berries into the background and just do a soft background with the same colors of the berries. And now that those flower shapes are in place, I again have realized that my shadows on my berries aren't quite dark enough, so I will continue to glaze, and I'm still just pretty much following the colors that are underneath where I'm going to glaze. So sticking to the green and the yellow and the blue. Some parts I will put in a bit of that cobalt teal though, and that's pretty much how I will pull this painting together. If you see it to the end, I begin to place cobalt teal in several areas in the painting, and I make a few really exaggerated brush strokes with that color, and it just kind of helps to unify the whole piece. At this point though, I was starting to get just a little frustrated. It didn't really look how I wanted it to look. Nothing seemed to be going right. So I paused, let the paper dry, and I stepped away. And that's really good advice to take when you're just feeling frustrated, like nothing's going the way you want it, and you're placing brush strokes just to place brush strokes with no real plan or vision in mind. If you step away from the painting and come back to it in a few minutes or a few hours or even a few days, it really helps, because when I came back to this painting, I had direction and I knew what I wanted to do. Here I decided that those flower shapes needed just a little bit more depth, so I'm going back in with some stronger, thicker mixes of colors, and I'm just picking out certain areas that I think would benefit from being higher contrast. The center of the two berries that I'm working on now, the ones that face you the most, are definitely the ones that gave me the most trouble. I attempted to make the dark areas in those more interesting by adding color in the shadows, and they kind of just got muddy on me. Now I'm mixing up a brown color from the green and the red and a little bit of the quinacridone yellow, and I'm just placing in my branches. I didn't want the branch to stand out, so it's just a few strokes, and then I will let it dry, and I will come back to it later. When I came over here to the leaves, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, so I put in that dark shadow that you see on the leaf in the reference photo, and I decided I didn't like it. And that hand right there is my husband. He is my biggest fan and my biggest critic. So when I'm unsure about something, I ask him, and then you see his hand on camera. And at this point, I remembered that beautiful cobalt teal stroke that I made. So I started putting that everywhere. I put it in my leaves and I splattered a little bit around, and I began to highlight some of my berries with that cobalt teal. And since it is more of an opaque color, it kind of allows you to cover up things in a sense a little bit. So either way, I'm just going and refining, and now you can see I was trying to cover up a little bit of the center of that berry with that cobalt teal, and I also put a little bit more on my branches, and then I decided to call it done after glazing a few more shadows. And here's my final painting. If you guys like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. If you want to look for me on other social platforms, I am AshlyDeBoardArt on Facebook and Instagram. Thank y'all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.